Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk to you about the latest episode of The Last of Us. It was called Please Hold On to My Hand. And as it starts, Ellie is playing with a gun as she poses in the mirror of a dilapidated bathroom of a dilapidated gas station while Joel siphons gas. Ellie then emerges from said bathroom and starts reading Joel puns from a book of puns that she must have found since we last saw her, and seems to delight in it in a very childlike way. As they get underway back on the road, she finds an adult magazine similar to Playgirl in the truck and says a line of dialogue from the game about what she sees in the magazine. And she finds a Hank Williams tape in the truck, which they then play in the stereo. And the song that plays is Alone and Forsaken by Hank Williams, which of course is from the game. Soon they get off the road and camp in the woods, and Ellie continues to act like a little kid. They cook some 20-year-old Chef Boyardee ravioli, which I can't imagine was any good, though they both say that they like it. And in the morning, we discover that Ellie has never had or even smelled coffee before when Joel brews some. After they break camp and drive on, Joel explains the situation with his brother, who was apparently in Desert Storm before he moved to Boston after the war, which was just before he joined the Fireflies. Soon they come upon a blocked section of the road at a bridge, which is a massive car graveyard, and at the same time, a person graveyard to some degree. So Joel tries to go around the bridge by driving up on a highway ramp and going through the city, but then can't find the access back to the highway, and soon they're besieged by some folks who drop a cinder block on the windshield from a fire escape and cause the tires to be punctured with a razor strip. Joel ends up crashing the truck through a building and sends Ellie to hide in a wall as he tries to fight off the people. He then ends up in hand-to-hand combat with one of the people who storms the building, at which point Ellie comes out of hiding, and after slowly approaching the two men as they were on the floor kind of wrestling, she shoots the attacker with her gun, causing him to jump off of Joel, at which point he falls apart and starts begging for his life as she holds the gun over him. Joel then takes the gun and asks Ellie to get back behind the wall, and then seems to kill the guy, although we don't actually hear a gunshot. Then they move out on foot. Next, we meet a woman named Kathleen who is interrogating someone in a shipping container. Apparently, she is the leader of a community of heavily armed people who, under her leadership, took down the local quarantine zone. And after she learns that the guy who attacked Joel and one other guy are dead, she shoots the guy she was interrogating, who apparently was the doctor who delivered her at birth. And I guess she was interrogating him about the whereabouts of a character called Henry, who, of course, was in the game. She then sends a shitload of her people out in various vehicles looking for Joel and Ellie, as well as Henry, who I guess was, at one point, at least in the lore of the show, part of her community. Joel and Ellie kind of talk about how she shouldn't have had to be in a position to shoot someone in order to save him, and he mentions how he assumed it was her first time having to do something like that, and she tells him that it wasn't. Which is interesting because when she was farting around with the gun in the gas station bathroom, you could tell that she'd handled the gun before. We didn't know why at the time, but this would be why. Realizing that he's lucky she had it so that she could save his ass, he gives her the gun back and teaches her the correct way to use it versus how she was taught by Fedra, and tells her to put it in her pack so she won't, quote, shoot her ass off, but she doesn't listen and puts it in her jacket pocket. Kathleen goes up into an attic in one of the buildings in her area and finds what appears to be an abandoned hideout spot for Henry, who is traveling with Sam, who of course is also from the game. As she continues her search with one of her lieutenants, a man named Perry, who's being played by the guy who played Joel's brother Tommy in the games, they come upon a room that seems to be harboring something bad under a broken floor, which I'm guessing is a bunch of infected. Next, Joel and Ellie enter a tall building and start making their way up some 40 flights of steps so they can get a lay of the land from a high viewpoint. When Ellie asks Joel how he knew they were being attacked when they first saw someone in the road pretending to be in need of help, he explains that he used to be with a bunch of people, including Tess and his brother, that preyed on people in the streets just like that at one time, but he declined to answer her when she asked if he'd ever killed innocent people. Somewhere around the 35th floor, they stop climbing and bed down for the night on the floor. Before they go to sleep, Joel asks Ellie about who she'd had to hurt before, but she declines to answer, and then they talk about how it sucks that she's so young and has to deal with all this stuff. and then they both laugh at a crazy pun that she tells him about diarrhea. At some point, they fall asleep, and then Joel is awakened when Ellie calls out his name to alert him to the fact that she's being held at gunpoint by a little boy who, if I'm not mistaken, is Sam from the game, and that's where the episode ends. So I like this episode because it continued to show, the state of the world after the infected apocalypse. And by that I mean, in physical terms of the infrastructure. And for the first time, we're really seeing a group of people who are operating outside of the quarantine zone. And by a group of people, I mean more than one or two people that shared a scene with Joel and Ellie or Joel and Tess. And, for the first time, we see that a quarantine zone was taken down, which we'd heard about before but hadn't seen. I also liked how we saw that, the relationship is evolving between Joel and Ellie. They're getting more comfortable with each other. Little by little, Joel is letting his guard down and starting to care about Ellie, and she continues to try to endear herself to him. And in addition to that, we get to see how she is so very childlike and so different from Joel, who, of course, has lived this hardened existence where he's been out in the shit, you might say, for, the better part of 20 years, where she's only like 13 or 14 and has always lived like in a QZ, a quarantine zone. And, that of course is exactly how things went in the game. And it was part of why the game is so awesome. So it's making the show good. And I wasn't sure I was gonna like this actress as Ellie, but I'm warming to her and I'm liking her performance. I'm liking how they are, of course, very closely following the game, which they've been doing since the beginning, and I'm finding that to be very good, even though they're changing some things. I wasn't thrilled that there weren't any infected in this episode, and I can hear my good friend Matt saying about the same thing, that he's not happy that there weren't any infected in this episode. But we're still not quite halfway through the season. There are 9 episodes. We've now seen the fourth one, so halfway through the next one will be the halfway point. So hopefully we'll start seeing more of the infected. But in reality, that's just something I want to see because it's cool. It isn't really even necessary to the story because the story is about people. The story is about humanity, as I said before. So this was a solid episode that's brought the storytelling right to where it should be at about this point, and I'm looking forward to next week's episode. Incidentally, the show has been renewed for a second season, so that's good news. But I'm going to get out of here for now. I'll be back with a review of the next episode once it's released. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.